Hello everyone, before the starting of the video I would like to request you all to like and subscribe. That's it, thank you and enjoy. Chapter 21 The Convoy. Chapter 21 The Convoy. Hanks burst out through the pharmacy's back door. The night wind slammed into him like a wall, cold, fetid, carrying the stench of rot and dried blood. The rage boiling in his chest burned colder than that wind, sharper than any blade, wilder than any storm. A dozen walkers were already converging on the alley, drawn by the chaos inside. Their pale hands clawed at the air, blocking the way forward. "Out of my way," Hanks growled. Then he charged. He didn't dodge. He didn't hesitate. He moved like a streak of black lightning, crashing headlong into the dead. The fire axe swung. Splat. The first walker's skull split open like overripe fruit, its body collapsing before it even realized it was dead. Hanks didn't break stride. He pivoted on his heel and let the axe sweep sideways in a brutal arc. Crunch. Another head severed cleanly at the neck, spraying the air with a fine mist of gore. He was past thinking. It was pure instinct now, rage and survival fused into one relentless rhythm. Behind him, Glenn trailed with wide, terrified eyes, caught somewhere between awe and horror. By the time they reached the corner, the street was littered with bodies. There. Glenn pointed to a half-intact sedan parked by the curb. He scrambled into the driver's seat while Hanks yanked open the passenger door and tossed the bloody axe into the back. "Go, go, go." Glenn twisted the key. The engine coughed, sputtered, then roared to life. Yes. He slammed it into gear, and the car lurched forward, tearing down the empty street toward the pharmacy. Headlights sliced through the dark like twin blades. But just as they were about to cross an intersection, something snapped inside Hanks's gut. A cop's sixth sense. That inexplicable prickle of danger. "Down." He shouted the word as his whole body tensed. He ducked hard, rolling off the seat and pressing himself flat under the dashboard. And then, rat-a-tat, bang, bang, gunfire erupted from a second-story window in a dilapidated building to their left. Thunk, thunk, crash. The car's hood and side door exploded with holes, the windshield shattered into glittering shards. "Ah!" Glenn screamed, wrenching the wheel. The sedan fishtail-ed, slammed into a curb, and nearly flipped before grinding to a smoking halt against a lamp post. White steam hissed from under the hood. "Turn off the lights. Stay down," Hanks hissed through his teeth. He drew his P226, racking the slide in one smooth motion. The shooting had stopped. Their attackers were either checking their aim, reloading, or just sloppy enough to lose sight of their target. "Who the hell are they?" Glenn whispered, trembling as he reached up to flick off the headlights. Hanks didn't answer. His eyes tracked the angles, his ears parsing the echoes of the last gunshots. Two types of weapons, one handgun, one pump-action shotgun. Random bursts, inconsistent rhythm, a disorganized group, not trained soldiers. In the direction, left side, second floor window. He needed line of sight. "Glenn," he murmured, voice low, surgical. "When I count to 3, hit the horn. Once. Then keep your head down." "What? Why?" "Just do it." "Oh, okay." Hanks adjusted his position, took aim toward the second-story window. 1, 2, 3. Honk. The car's horn blared like a scream through the night. Instantly, two silhouettes leaned out the window, trying to get a look at their target. That was all Hanks needed. His pistol barked 4 times. Bang, 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 bang. Each shot measured, deliberate, perfect. The muzzle flashes lit his face like a strobe, his eyes cold and steady. One bandit jerked as the bullet punched clean through his forehead, a fine red mist blooming behind him. He toppled backward, dead before he hit the floor. The other screamed as his arm exploded in blood. His gun tumbled from his hand and clattered out the window to the street below. Hanks's third and fourth shots struck the edge of the second-floor window in rapid succession, shattering brick and glass. The sharp impact forced the gunman to duck out of sight. No one dared peek again. Clean, controlled, swift counterfire. "Move, out of the car, stay low," Hanks barked, kicking open the passenger door. He rolled out, using the wrecked vehicle and the nearby wall for cover, and fired a short suppressive burst toward the window. Muffled shouts echoed from inside the building, followed by frantic footsteps. Whoever they were, they knew now they'd picked the wrong fight. "Wait, there's stuff in the trunk," Glenn whispered hoarsely, already reaching for the latch. Hanks spun to cover him, eyes cutting between the shadows and the broken windows above. They popped open the trunk. Inside, a small jackpot, canned food, bottled water, and 2 full jerrycans of fuel. "Grab it," Hanks said curtly. He slung a backpack of supplies over his shoulder and covered Glenn as the younger man hefted the fuel. "Go. Stay on my right." The two darted from one ruined car to the next, using every scrap of debris and wall as cover. Their footsteps barely made a sound over the distant moans of the dead. Glenn's breath came fast and ragged, the twin fuel cans sloshing in his grip. He didn't dare stop, not even to breathe. Hanks, however, never broke his rhythm. His pistol stayed angled down but ready, his sharp gaze constantly scanning the darkness ahead. The short firefight was already spreading ripples across the dead city. Gunfire was a dinner bell, and the walkers were answering. He could already hear their howls in the distance, echoing like sirens through the hollow streets. The raiders they'd hit weren't all dead either. If they were organized at all, more were on the way. Almost there, Glenn panted, spotting the faint outline of the pharmacy down the block. But Hanks suddenly stopped, his instinct screaming no. He reached out, grabbed Glenn by the shoulder, and yanked him behind the support pillar of a toppled billboard. What is it?" Glenn whispered, voice trembling. Hanks didn't answer. He narrowed his eyes toward the far end of the street. Beyond the pharmacy, maybe 100 meters out, 4 vehicles were crawling into view. Headlights flicked off, shadows spilled out of the trucks, silhouettes of armed men taking up positions along both sides of the street. A heavily modified pickup, a box van, 2 smaller cars. A full convoy. Hanks's expression hardened. "Glenn, the radio, now." Glenn fumbled for the walkie-talkie and handed it over. "Clem, you there?" Hanks whispered, eyes still locked on the advancing silhouettes. A burst of static, then a small, bright voice. "Hanks, you're back." "I'm here." "Good. Put Lee or Kenny on the line." A shuffle, then Lee's deep voice came through, tight and urgent. "Officer, what's your status?" "We're fine," Hanks replied quickly, voice clipped. "Took out 2 ambushers, but the noise drew a crowd. We've got a convoy rolling up on your street, 3, maybe 4 vehicles." Kenny cut in, swearing under his breath. "Damn it, we see them too. They're spreading out, looks like they're hunting someone." "They're the same bastards from the gas station," Hanks said, watching through the moonlight as the men fanned out, sweeping their flashlights across the road. A few hacked down stray walkers with machetes, while others covered them with shotguns and rifles. Their movements were tighter, more disciplined than the ragtag group earlier. "Not amateurs this time, they haven't spotted us yet," Hanks murmured into the radio. "That gives us a window." He paused, planning fast. "Glenn and I got the fuel. We're holed up behind a building near the alley behind you. Listen carefully, Lee, Kenny, no lights, no noise. Barricade both entrances and stay invisible. We can't afford a single mistake. We'll regroup and move out before they close the trap. Once I give the word, we load up, refuel, grab the meds, and get the hell out." "Understood," Lee answered, his tone grim. "We'll stay dark. And, I found the storage key. It should open the pharmacy's back room." He hesitated, his voice lowering with guilt. "Don't ask how." "I won't," Hanks said simply. "Keep it safe until I get there." He released the transmit button, took one last look at the approaching convoy, then slipped the radio back into his vest. "Glenn," he whispered, "keep those cans steady. Stay low. We move along the shadows, don't make a sound." Glenn swallowed hard, nodded. "All right, got it, officer." He tightened his grip on the fuel cans, trying to steady his shaking hands. The moonlight glinted off the metal handles as the 2 men began to creep forward again, their bodies pressed to the walls, shadows blending into deeper shadow. Far ahead, engines growled softly. Men murmured. Flashlights swept the street like searching eyes. The convoy had come hunting. And this time, the city itself seemed to be holding its breath. 3 comments 0 vote. Chapter 22 No children invited. Chapter 22 No children invited. Hanks pushed open the back door of the derelict building without a sound. The hinges creaked faintly, but his left hand immediately pressed the metal to still it. He scanned both ends of the alley, eyes sharp, movements precise. No walkers, no flashlights, no shouting. He raised 2 fingers in a silent signal. Clear. Glenn followed close behind, clutching the 2 fuel cans like they were his lifeline. His wiry frame, built for pizza runs, not combat, was already trembling from exhaustion. The steady slosh of gasoline was the only sound between them. The two slipped along the walls, moving fast but silent. The pharmacy's back door was barely 30 meters ahead, but under that crushing silence, it felt like miles. Hanks's SP-226 stayed raised, the hammer half-cocked. His eyes swept every shadow, every window crack, every piece of debris that could hide movement. The scavengers, flashlights had drifted toward another street now, their coarse shouting fading into the distance. But in the opposite direction, the walkers' guttural howls were growing louder, closing in. Every second mattered. Glenn could hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears, so loud he thought it might give them away. Sweat ran down his palms, slicking the metal handles of the fuel cans. Hanks, by contrast, moved like a machine tuned to perfection. Every nerve locked in quiet focus, his awareness sharpened to an edge so fine it could feel the air shift before danger struck. Finally, the reinforced back door of the pharmacy came into view, the same one they had barricaded earlier with a crowbar wedged through the latch. Hanks gave a soft, deliberate tap tap tap. Immediately, the door cracked open a few inches, darkness, and the cold glint of a gun barrel staring back. Then Lee's face appeared, tense but relieved. Kenny leaned in behind him, shotgun ready. When they recognized the pair, both men exhaled sharply and stepped aside. Hanks and Glenn slipped in. The door shut fast behind them, the crowbar back in place. Inside, it was near pitch black. Only thin veins of moonlight leaked through the boarded windows, outlining ghostly silhouettes. No one spoke. The air was thick with fear, fatigue, and the faint chemical sting of medicine and sweat. "Got the fuel," Kenny whispered, voice barely more than breath. His eyes locked on the two precious cans Glenn set down. Glenn nodded hard, his arms trembling from the weight. Lee reached into his pocket and pulled out a ring of keys. The metal jingled faintly in the silence. "Officer," he murmured, holding them out. Hanks took the keys without asking where they came from. His tone was low, clipped, command mode. "Lee, Kenny, you refuel the pickup. Quietly. Carly, Katya, distribute food. We'll need strength to move fast. Glenn, you stay with Clementine and Duck. Doug, keep an eye on Larry. Lily, you're with me. We're getting into that storeroom." Orders given, everyone scattered into motion, quiet and efficient. Lee and Kenny cracked the door again, just enough to slip through. Once outside, they crouched low by the truck. The faint glug 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 of fuel pouring into the tank was agonizingly loud in the still night. Both men flinched with every sound. Luckily, most of the walkers had been drawn away by earlier gunfire. For the moment, the street was eerily calm. Inside, Carly and Katya unpacked the salvaged rations, moving like ghosts as they passed out food. No one spoke, only the quiet chew and swallow of desperate mouths filled the dark. The calories and sugar brought a flicker of life back into pale faces, but the fear still lingered behind every glance. Larry, naturally, was eating the loudest, grumbling between bites, but devouring his share with gusto. No one had the energy to argue with him. Glenn sat with Clementine and Duck near the back wall, whispering soft reassurances neither of them fully believed. His back was to the cold brick, his breaths coming fast and shallow. After the chase, the fight, and the sprint, his adrenaline was fading fast, leaving only the ache of exhaustion. Across the room, Hanks and Lily exchanged a silent look. He gave her a small nod toward the pharmacy's deeper interior. She hesitated, then followed, her steps quiet but hurried. Doug started to say something, some warning or question, but Lily just shook her head once before vanishing with Hanks into the dark corridor. The old wood creaked under their weight. The light from the boarded windows faded entirely as they descended into the back hall. Beyond the next door lay the storage room, and with it, the medicine that might save a life, or the noise that might doom them all. The heavy steel door to the storeroom loomed before them, locked tight with a solid padlock. Hanks slid the ring of keys into the keyhole and turned it slowly. Click. The tumblers shifted, then released. A soft snap followed, and the lock dropped into his hand. He pushed the door open just wide enough to slip through. The automatic ceiling lights flickered to life with a hum, illuminating rows upon rows of shelves packed with medicine and supplies. "Move, find anything for cardiac arrest or angina. Nitroglycerin, beta blockers, anything strong," he ordered, stepping inside first. Lily followed quickly, adrenaline overriding her fear. Within seconds, she spotted a drawer labeled, "Cardiovascular Emergency," and yanked it open. Inside were several vials and bottles, nitroglycerin tablets, a few boxes of isosorbide, and some other hard medications. I found them, she said, her voice breaking with relief. She stuffed the bottles into her jacket pocket without hesitation. Hanks gave a curt nod, still scanning the shelves, sweeping up a handful of antibiotics, painkillers, and disinfectant, anything useful in a world where infection meant death. And then, whee-oh, whee-oh, whee-oh. The air exploded with a blaring alarm. The sound was shrill, metallic, and deafening, like 1,000 knives tearing through the night. Both of them froze. A flashing red light on the ceiling corner pulsed like a heartbeat gone mad, an old infrared motion sensor alarm, still functional after all this time. Its howl cut through the silent streets of Macon like thunder, shattering the fragile stillness the survivors had clung to. Lily screamed, stumbling backward and almost collapsing from the shock. "Move," Hanks barked, his voice slicing through the alarm. He grabbed her wrist and yanked her toward the exit. The rest of the group had already gone rigid. Faces drained of color. Every heartbeat syncing with the relentless wail of the alarm. Outside, at the far end of the street, the scavengers, shouting, stopped abruptly. Then, in perfect unison, they turned, every flashlight beam snapping toward the pharmacy. The entire county seemed to jolt awake. The dead city stirred. And then came the sound that made every human soul seize up in terror. RRRAAARRHHHH. GGGHHAAA. Screams, dozens, hundreds, rolling in from every direction. The walkers were calling back, howling, answering. The alarm had become a beacon, summoning them from every alley, every broken street, every building still standing. Within seconds, the faint moans grew into a chorus, a wall of hunger and death converging on the pharmacy. "Lee, Kenny, is that truck ready?" Hanks roared, voice barely cutting through the wailing siren. "Just finished," Lee shouted back, trembling as he jammed the fuel cap shut. The sound of it echoed too loudly in the chaos. "Everyone, on the truck. Now," Hanks bellowed. The command tore through panic like a whip crack. Whatever fear they had, the authority in his voice overrode it. Even in the apocalypse, when Hanks barked an order, people moved. He slammed the storeroom door behind him, twisting the key hard in the lock. The tumblers snapped shut, trapping the blaring alarm inside. He tossed the keys into a corner, where they clattered faintly against the shelves. "Back door, go." Kenny and Lee were already at the wheel of the pickup. The engine growled to life, no time left for stealth now. Glenn and Carly grabbed Clementine and Duck. Katya and Doug hauled the pail, terrified Larry to his feet, practically dragging him toward the exit. Lily stumbled after them, clutching the nitroglycerin to her chest. Hanks was the last to move. He fired twice into the doorway. Bang, bang, dropping two walkers that had managed to squeeze through the front barricade. Then he turned and sprinted, slamming the back door shut behind him. The night outside was alive with chaos, growling engines, shrieking alarms, and the thunder of hundreds of undead feet. Hanks vaulted onto the pickup's open bed, spinning around and shouting toward the cab. "Drive, south, go, go, go." Kenny floored it. The tires screamed, spitting dust and smoke. The truck jolted forward, the engine roaring in protest, the bed packed tight with survivors. As they sped away, Hanks caught one last glimpse of the pharmacy in the rearview mirror. The dark mass of the dead flooding toward it like a living tide. At the far intersection, the scavengers' convoy flared to life, headlights igniting, engines revving. Without a word exchanged, both groups, the living and the damned, turned south. Different reasons, same direction, like destiny itself had set them on a collision course. 1 comments 0 vote. Chapter 23 The Car Chase. Chapter 23 The Car Chase. The pickup truck tore down the ruined street like a spooked stallion. Engine howling, tires screaming, every bounce slamming the packed passengers against the metal bed. Each jolt drew muffled cries and stifled groans from the back. Fear, exhaustion, and the raw instinct to stay alive. "Left side, watch it," Hanks shouted. Kenny jerked the steering wheel hard, and the truck skidded dangerously. Narrowly missing a wave of 10, no, 15, walkers stumbling out of a side alley. The corpses screeched, clawing at the air as the pickup roared past. Rotting hands smearing the truck's flanks as they were left behind in a blur of motion and filth. "Right side too. Oh, hell, there's more of them," Lee yelled, his voice trembling. From the passenger window, He could see dozens more emerging from storefronts, their pale eyes reflecting the headlights as they swarmed toward the noise. The road ahead was rapidly closing in. The alarm still wailing from the pharmacy behind them had drawn what felt like half the damn county. The dead were converging on the truck like an ocean swallowing a sinking ship. "Don't stop, run them over," Hanks barked, his voice sharp, steady, completely devoid of hesitation. Kenny's knuckles turned white on the wheel. He gritted his teeth, slammed his foot down on the pedal. And the pickup roared like a beast unleashed. Bang! Thud! Crunch! The front bumper hit a cluster of walkers head-on, bones snapping like dry twigs. Black-red blood exploded across the windshield. The wipers smeared it into grotesque streaks that refused to clear. "Damn it, I can't see a thing," Kenny shouted, flipping the wipers again. The glass only grew worse. "Just keep driving straight," Hanks barked over the roar of the engine. "This won't hold," Kenny shouted back. "The road's filling up fast." He slammed the gearshift down and floored the accelerator, forcing the truck through a narrow break in the horde. The pickup jolted violently as bodies rolled under the tires, each one a wet, sickening thump. From the back, Glenn suddenly shouted, "Kenny! Next intersection, take a left." "What?" "There's a small parking lot past that turn. We can cut through and get to a service road. It'll take us around the main street and the biggest part of the horde." For a moment, the truck was filled with frantic breathing and the rattling of loose tools. Hanks turned his head sharply, his voice like a command post siren. "Do it, listen to him, left turn, now." Kenny didn't argue. He tightened his grip on the steering wheel, exhaled through his teeth, and waited for the opening that could mean the difference between life and death. The next turn was coming fast, and the dead were coming faster. The pickup roared like a wounded beast as Kenny spun the wheel hard, tires screeching across cracked asphalt. The truck burst through a rusted fence into an abandoned parking lot, smashing aside overturned carts and broken signs. With one last violent jolt, it tore through a narrow exit and shot out onto a relatively open side road. For a heartbeat, just one, the survivors exhaled. They'd shaken the horde. Then, bang, bang, bullets slammed into the rear panel of the truck, throwing up sparks in the dark. Metal clanged. Someone screamed. "Goddamn!" Kenny barked, glancing in the rearview mirror. His face twisted. Them again. Those bastards won't quit. Behind them, headlights cut through the smoke and night haze. Two vehicles, one a heavily modified pickup, the other a dented sedan, came hurtling after them like rabid dogs. "They're the Macon County gang. I recognize that truck," Glenn shouted over the noise, his voice cracking with panic. Hanks braced himself against the bed wall, his eyes cold, his hands steady. "Keep it straight," he barked. He raised his P226, sighted over the tailgate. Bang, bang, bang. 3 sharp muzzle flashes lit the night. The bullets punched into the pursuers, hood and windshield, forcing their driver to veer off. Sparks flew, tires screeched, but there were more of them. And they were better armed. A shotgun muzzle jutted from the chasing pickup. Boom! A storm of buckshot peppered the air. Most missed, but several pellets ripped into the truck's rear quarter and side panels, the impact ringing like hammer blows. "Ah!" Doug screamed. A ricochet tore through the truck bed's thin metal and grazed his arm, sending blood spilling down his sleeve. "Shit, Lee!" Hanks shouted. "Got it!" Lee smashed open the cab window with his elbow, reached under the seat, and yanked out the Mossberg 590. He passed it back through the shattered glass. "Here. Use this for the bleeding." Katya tossed a roll of bandages toward the back as Hanks caught the shotgun. The weight was perfect, heavy, reliable, deadly. Hanks pumped the foregrip once, CHCHK, calculating distances and angles even as the truck bounced beneath him. Shooting from a moving vehicle was almost pointless, unless you aimed to suppress, not kill. And no weapon suppressed quite like a shotgun. "Kenny, steady," Hanks yelled. "Doing my best." He leaned out, wind whipping through his hair, and fired. Boom! The first shot was wild by design. A cone of death tearing across the nearest sedan's front grille. Metal shredded. The hood burst into a storm of sparks and smoke. The windshield fractured into a spider's web. The driver panicked, stomping the brakes and jerking the wheel. The car fishtailed into an S-curve, barely avoiding a spinout. "Beautiful," Kenny whooped, catching the sight in the rearview. But the modified pickup behind it barely slowed, its reinforced bumper shrugging off the damage. The gunner leaned out again, leveling another shot. Hanks was faster. He pumped once, click, and fired again. Boom. Buckshot peppered the front tire and fender. The pickup's left wheel dipped with a metallic crunch, the rubber deflating instantly. The Raider driver fought the wheel, cursing, the vehicle lurching sideways before he recovered control. Their gunner nearly fell out, swearing as he ducked back into the cab. The gap widened. Hanks inhaled, calm amid the chaos, and checked his rounds, only a few shells left. He shifted position, eyes narrowing on the second sedan still weaving toward them. Boom. The third blast hit home, clean through the front left tire. The rubber exploded in a spray of debris. The car veered hard left, the driver losing grip on the wheel. Crash. It slammed into a wooden utility pole, metal folding like paper. The impact was loud, final. No one inside was getting up again. One down, Hanks muttered. The last pursuer limped along, its front end sparking and sputtering, speed dropping fast. No hesitation, Hanks pumped the shotgun once more. Boom. A spread of buckshot raked across the Raider's windshield, cracking the glass and punching holes in the hood. Boom. He aimed low, blasting the asphalt beside the pickup. The burst of dust and shrapnel blinded the driver. The Raider behind the wheel cursed and jerked the wheel, just as Hanks chambered the last shell. He waited, breath steady, eyes locked. Then he saw it, a split-second opening as the driver's shoulder shifted into view. Boom. The sixth shot screamed through the night. Glass exploded, blood sprayed across the inside of the windshield. The gunner beside him convulsed, torn apart by the scattershot. The driver howled, clutching his side, then lost control entirely. The truck veered right, smashed through a storefront window, and wedged halfway into the building with a groan of bending metal. Its engine sputtered, hissed, and died. Silence fell. Only the low growl of Kenny's engine and the distant chorus of the undead remained. For several long seconds, no one spoke. Everyone stared at Hanks, the steady rhythm of his breathing, the way smoke still drifted from the shotgun barrel. It wasn't luck, it was precision, cold, mechanical precision. He lowered the smoking Mossberg, his shoulder throbbing from recoil, and slumped back against the bed wall. Sweat beaded on his temple. He wasn't exhausted, just burning with adrenaline. We lost them," Glenn said at last, his voice trembling between relief and disbelief. But Hanks didn't relax. His eyes stayed fixed on the road behind them. Only when he was certain no more headlights appeared did he finally turn back. "Kenny, get off the main road," he said hoarsely. "Find a detour. Glenn, guide him to the motel." He checked on Doug, whose arm was wrapped in blood-soaked bandages. "Doug needs treatment. Larry needs his meds, and this truck's not surviving another chase." Kenny gave a sharp nod. "Copy that. We'll make it, boss." Hanks said nothing, just racked the empty shotgun one more time, the sound echoing like punctuation at the end of a battle. Chapter 24 of Fragile Calm. Chapter 24 of Fragile Calm. The sky was a dull, lifeless gray, the kind that bled into everything it touched. Morning light crept reluctantly through the fog, pale and cold. The battered pickup, its frame splattered with gore and riddled with bullet holes, rumbled into the cracked parking lot of the U-shaped motel. It looked just like the one they'd left the night before. And yet, somehow, it didn't. The courtyard was silent, empty. An RV sat parked in the middle like a lone sentinel. The front gate, once forced shut in a hurry, still bore deep gouges and twisted wire from its last desperate repair. Kenny guided the damaged truck carefully through the narrow opening, the tires crunching over broken glass and trash. Every sound echoed like a gunshot in the still morning air. He stopped the truck at the center of the courtyard, nose facing the exit, ready to run again at a moment's notice. "We made it back alive." Glenn's voice trembled, disbelieving and exhausted. "For now," Hanks rasped, voice hoarse but steady. He was already moving, hand wrapped tight around his P226, scanning the perimeter. "Lee, Kenny, sweep every room, start from both ends and clear as you go. Glenn, check the RV, make sure it's secure and functional. Carly, Katya, tend to the wounded and keep the kids near the truck." His commands were sharp, concise. The others, half dead with fatigue, moved like machines following muscle memory. Lee and Kenny exchanged a look, then split off, rifles raised. Doors slammed open one by one, echoing down the corridor. Each shout, each scuffle, was followed by the dull silence of something being put down. Meanwhile, Hanks strode toward the gate, inspecting the haphazard barricade of scrap metal, wire, and rusted car doors. He ran a hand over a fresh dent in the steel, frowning as he noticed drag marks in the dirt just beyond. Someone had been here recently. Lee and Kenny returned, faces drawn. "All clear, officer," Lee reported. Kenny added, "We've got decent visibility from the second-floor balcony, can see most of the road out front." "Good," Hanks muttered, exhaling through his nose. "We'll make this place hold." But the others weren't so eager. Their shoulders sagged, eyes glazed over. The thought of working again, after so much running, weighed on them like chains. "I know you're tired," Hanks said quietly, but his tone cut through the air like a blade. "But if you want to stay alive, don't even think about slacking off." He pointed to the ground near the gate. "Look at the marks." Everyone turned. There were smears of dried blood and something worse. Drag trails, uneven and deliberate. That wasn't the walkers. Hanks knelt, rubbing the blackened stain between his fingers. His jaw tightened. The message was clear. Humans had been here. A chill ran through them all. The undead were terrifying. But the living, the desperate, the armed, the hungry, were far worse. "We can't stay here long," Kenny muttered, rubbing his temples, staring at the ruined pickup. "But without gas or a working ride, we've got nowhere else to go." "Exactly." Hanks rose to his feet, his shadow stretching long across the courtyard. "So until we find fuel and a way out, this place is our fortress." He looked each of them in the eye. "And we'll make damn sure it holds." He started issuing new orders, voice ironclad and decisive. "Lee, Kenny, reinforce the gate. Use everything. Furniture, scrap metal, car parts. Seal every gap, cross-beam the weak points, it has to withstand a full-force hit. Glenn, Carly, you're on cleanup. Get the corpses out of the yard and buried. I don't want anything attracting attention. Katya, your medical lead. Prioritize Doug and Larry, use what supplies we have left. Keep the kids close. Lily, your inventory and logistics. Count every can, every bottle, every bullet. I want to know exactly how long we can survive, no optimism, only facts." Then his gaze fell on the smallest member of the group. The little girl who had followed him everywhere since the farm. "Clem, I'm here, Officer Hanks," she said, standing straight, trying to look brave. He knelt, meeting her eyes. "You've got the most important job of all. You're our ears. Stay by the RV. Keep the walkie-talkie on at all times. If you hear anything, voices, engines, walkers, you call me right away. Can you do that?" Her brown eyes shone with pride. "I can. I'll listen super carefully." Hanks smiled faintly, just for a moment. "Good girl." The moment the tasks were clear, something shifted. Purpose replaced fear. Even exhaustion bowed before survival. Soon the courtyard rang with the sound of hammering, dragging, and the dull scrape of barricades being built. Hanks joined them, climbing the metal staircase to the second-floor walkway. From there, he studied the motel's layout like a commander surveying a battlefield. Every weak point, every angle of approach, every route of escape. The sun rose higher, its warmth seeping into the cold air. Sweat mingled with dust, streaking every face. But in that small, makeshift fortress, a rhythm, an order, began to take shape. For the first time in days, they weren't running. They were building. It wasn't much of a fortress, just rusted wire, rotting wood, and desperation holding the world at bay. But for the first time in days, they weren't running. For the first time, they weren't prey. An hour passed, maybe more. The motel's battered gate now stood firmer, patched with scavenged metal and broken furniture. The courtyard had been swept clean, no corpses, no rot, no stench of death for once. Every ground floor window was nailed shut from the inside. But the sight of their dwindling supplies darkened even the pale light of morning. Lily stood over a pile of boxes and half-empty cans, her brow furrowed deep. "Not good," she muttered. Hanks gathered everyone in the courtyard. His face was expressionless, but his tone left no room for illusion. "Here's the situation," he began flatly. "Food, 2 days' worth if we ration it. Water, less. Ammo's nearly gone, and the truck's wheels won't last another long haul." The silence that followed was suffocating. Then, his voice shifted, low, steady, commanding. "But we have one thing we didn't have before, a place to breathe." He looked around the group, one by one. A base, a plan, and time enough to make the next move. "You've earned rest," Hanks continued, eyes sharp. "We'll do it in shifts. I'll take first watch. Lee and Kenny, second. Carly and Glenn, third. He straightened, hand resting on his sidearm. 4-hour rotations, no exceptions. At night, we regroup and plan next steps. What he didn't say aloud, the thing clawing at the back of his mind, was that the drag marks near the gate weren't made by walkers. The footprints had patterns, coordination, people. But the group didn't need that kind of fear right now. What they needed was sleep. The moment the orders were given, the tension broke. Everyone scattered to find whatever passed for comfort on the second floor, an old mattress, a dusty corner, a closed door that locked. For now, silence meant safety. Clementine stayed behind. When Hanks told her he was taking first watch, she insisted on sitting in the RV to help. Within minutes, she'd fallen asleep, curled up against the seat, the walkie-talkie clutched tightly in her small hands. Hanks checked the barricade one last time, ensuring every latch held, then walked back to the RV. He paused at the door. Inside, Clementine was still asleep, her breathing soft and even. He quietly grabbed a folded blanket from one of the rooms and draped it over her stomach. The corners of her lips twitched faintly, as if she were dreaming of something gentle. Outside, the world was far from gentle. The noise in Macon had drawn the dead away for now, leaving the motel in a rare, fragile quiet. For the first time, there was no screaming, no gunfire, just the faint rustle of wind through broken glass. By noon, the sky had turned pale blue. Lee and Kenny relieved him of watch, and Hanks slipped into the RV, moving quietly so as not to wake the girl. Clementine was still asleep, tucked beneath the blanket, the radio still pressed to her chest. Hanks eased himself into the driver's seat, the leather creaking under his weight. He didn't lean back fully, staying in that in-between posture, half ready, half resting. His hand unconsciously drifted to the cold metal of his P226, thumb tracing the slide. The chill of the steel was grounding. Too real, and that realness made the unreality of everything else hit harder. Who am I? The thought stabbed through his calm like ice. The memories were fractured, scattered like broken glass. One moment, he was someone else. A man from a quiet world, one without gunfire or rot. The next, he was here. In a nightmare made flesh. He didn't belong. He could feel it in his bones. This world wasn't his story. It was someone else's. He was an intruder wearing a stolen name, shoved onto a stage mid-performance with no script, no cues, no idea what the next act would bring. Every choice he made was a gamble on thin ice. Every mistake could kill not just him, but the people who had started looking at him as their anchor. His eyes drifted to the courtyard, to the boarded doors, the makeshift defenses, the people who had followed his voice and his orders without question. To his own hands, steady, scarred, stained with blood. Hands that once probably held a coffee cup, or a mouse. Now, they killed without hesitation. The disconnect made his head spin. Then, a small sound, barely audible, a sleepy murmur from the back seat. Hanks turned sharply, hand already halfway to his gun, then froze. Clementine had stirred in her sleep. She shifted slightly, hugging the radio closer to her chest, her brow furrowing for a second before relaxing again. She was real. That one realization hit him like sunlight breaking through fog. Her fear, her trust, her reliance on him, none of it was illusion. It was tangible, heavy, a responsibility he couldn't deny. He remembered the first time they met, the way she had believed him instantly, no matter how much he stumbled over his own lies. She had chosen to trust him, completely, and that meant he couldn't afford to falter. He exhaled slowly, the weight of it all pressing down like armor. In this broken, blood-soaked world, where everything else was fake or fragile, she was the only real thing left. Protecting her, that was his anchor, his purpose. The one thing that mattered. The man he used to be, the one with another name, another life, was gone. Washed away by blood and time. Now, he was Hanks. And he would be Hanks. No matter what it took. He turned his gaze back to the reinforced gate outside the RV window. The fear was still there, but now it had shape. It had direction. He would face this nightmare. He would carve a path through it, tooth and nail, gun and grit. Because she depended on him. Because Clementine was real. And for her sake, he would become whatever this world demanded. For her, he would be unstoppable. 3 comments 0 vote. Chapter 25 Conflict inside the motel. Chapter 25 Conflict inside the motel. Noon sunlight spilled across the courtyard of the Motor Inn. After taking the nitroglycerin tablets, Larry's condition finally stabilized. Some color had returned to his otherwise ashen face, his breathing steadied, and the trembling in his hands slowly subsided. He no longer needed support. Now he moved like an old lion regaining strength, slow, heavy, territorial. His eyes swept over the courtyard with a predatory gloom. Every so often, that harsh gaze landed on the front gate. On Lee, who was tightening wire and hauling boards to reinforce it. Lee could feel that stare burning holes in his back, needle sharp and hostile. He tried to ignore it, focusing on the work, bracing a plank against the inner frame, pulling wire taut until it creaked. HMPH, strong, aren't you? Larry's voice cracked through the stillness like a cold slap. Bet this sort of hard labor comes easy, huh? Must have gotten plenty of practice in prison. Lee froze. His hand slipped, a stray metal burr sliced his finger. A bead of blood welled up. He turned slowly, expression complicated. Sir, I'm only doing this so everyone can be safer. Safer. Larry barked out a laugh, quiet, but sharp enough for the entire courtyard to hear. Safe with a murderer in our group. Murderer. The word slammed into the air like a gunshot. Lily stiffened instinctively. Without realizing it, she edged closer to Glenn. Carly didn't react. She'd known from the start, back at the pharmacy. Katya gasped softly and pulled Duck closer. Kenny shot her a reassuring look, subtle, but firm. He wasn't distancing himself from Lee. Hanks had been dozing lightly in the RV. The raised voices cut through the haze, and he opened his eyes just in time to hear the accusation land. His gaze sharpened instantly. Lee's face turned ghost white. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. The past he tried so hard to bury had just been ripped open in front of everyone. Dad, Lily hissed, panic rising in her voice. She understood how reckless he was being. Numbers mattered. Insulting people when you weren't the strongest side was how fools got killed. But Larry only grew louder. What, am I wrong? He sneered. He jabbed a thick finger toward Lee. Do any of you know who this man is? Why he was locked up? He killed someone, a living, breathing man. All because the guy slept with his wife. Someone who can't control his temper. That's a ticking time bomb. You want him sleeping under the same roof as us? The courtyard fell silent, so silent you could hear distant walkers groaning beyond the fence. Lee's eyes squeezed shut, his fists clenched, then slowly loosened, powerless. He had no defense. It was the truth. Then, oh, just because the guy slept with his wife. A calm voice cut through the tension like a blade. Hanks. He walked from the center of the courtyard toward them, step by steady step. Stopping right between Lee and Larry. His tone was level, but carried the weight of someone who had seen blood and death and wasn't impressed by either of them. Old man, if someone were screwing your wife, what would you do? Sit in the corner and pretend you're not a spineless excuse of a husband. Because if a man can't even stand up when his wife is violated, then what the hell is he calling himself a man for? A father for? Hanks took a small step forward. Larry was taller, broader. But the aura rolling off Hanks, forged by killing and danger and survival, crashed down like a physical force. Larry flinched. For the first time, uncertainty flickered in his eyes. Hanks's right hand hung casually at his side. Or at least, it looked casual. But Larry noticed it. That hand was only an inch away from the holstered pistol on Hanks's thigh. A tiny detail. A deadly warning. Larry's pupils contracted sharply. The rest of his angry tirade jammed in his throat like a bone he couldn't swallow. Hanks didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He paid the price. The courts judged him. His gaze was cold, steady. But now there is no law. No court. No order. Outside, the only justices would ever can outrun a walker or outshoot a raider. His tone suddenly turned razor sharp. Right now, the only standard that matters is, can you fight? Can you find supplies? Can you protect others when the world goes to hell? He stepped forward, looming over Larry. And you're a sick old man who can't go 10 minutes without needing someone to fetch your medicine, your water, your food. And when you're done eating, you still have the guts to point fingers and curse. Larry's face went the color of cold ash. Hanks didn't stop. Lee. He turned his head, but his tone allowed no room for argument. Go rest. You need strength for later. Lee inhaled deeply, shaky, wounded. He gave Hanks a complicated look, then silently walked toward the rooms. Larry's jaw trembled. Anger burned in his eyes, but fear smothered it quickly. Because he understood something. The look in Hanks's eyes. That quiet, formless killing intent. Was not a bluff. One more word, and Hanks might very well put a bullet through him. Lily watched the scene unfold, watched her father deflate under pressure, watched Hanks turn away like swatting a fly. Her lips pressed into a thin line. Anger, fear, frustration, she swallowed them all. She wasn't blind. In a straight fight, her father wouldn't last a second. From now on, Hanks said, sweeping his gaze across the group. I don't want to hear any more pointless arguments. Save your mouths for eating, we need every calorie. His tone ended the confrontation like a slammed door. Rest, all of you. Lily, Glenn, come with me. The rest hesitated only a few seconds before dispersing. Hanks led the two of them to a quieter corner of the courtyard. He spoke directly, without ceremony. My goal is simple, I'm taking Clementine to Savannah. His eyes locked on them. You're either staying, or you've got your own plans. Hanks had no intention of dragging a crowd of liabilities with him. If it had been just Glenn, maybe, but the rest? Impossible. Lily immediately shook her head. Savannah, that place will be worse than here, she said sharply, then softened a little. My father can't handle long travel. We heard broadcasts, National Guard setting up quarantine and rescue zones. Her eyes hardened. We're staying. This motel is defensible. We're safer here. Hanks nodded once. Glenn, however, shifted uneasily. He looked at Hanks, looked at Lily, then hung his head. I can't go to Savannah. And I can't stay here either. He swallowed, voice trembling with worry. I have to go back to Atlanta. My friend T-Dog is still there. I don't know if he's alive. I have to find him. Hanks wasn't surprised. Fine, he said simply. Everyone has their own path. He paused. Before we leave here for good, I'll try to gather supplies. Some for the road, some for you all. After that, he shrugged lightly. You're on your own. Both Lily and Glenn nodded, understanding the weight of his words. Glenn hesitated, cheeks flushing slightly. He fidgeted, then finally blurted out. Hanks, officer, one more thing. I need a car. He grimaced. My car got shot to hell last night. If I don't have one, I can't make it back to Atlanta. Hanks didn't even blink. Fine, if we find a suitable one, it's yours. Glenn lit up like a kid on Christmas. Really? Thank you, thank you, thank you. Don't celebrate yet, Hanks snorted. We still need to find one. And find gas. He jerked his chin toward the gate. You're coming with me into town later. As he spoke, he was already walking toward the RV, tapping the metal frame lightly. I also need to figure out if this big hunk of junk still runs. 3 comments 0 vote. Chapter 26 Glenn was born for a baseball bat. Chapter 26 Glenn was born for a baseball bat. Clementine was perched in the driver's seat, small hands curiously turning the oversized steering wheel. The moment she saw Hanks enter the RV, she hopped down and ran over, grabbing his hand. Hanks, are we really going to drive this big car? She asked, tilting her head up. There was nothing but excitement in her eyes, no fear at all. If it's willing to cooperate, Hanks replied, ruffling her hat, the gentleness slipping into his voice unconsciously. He began searching the RV, opening every compartment he could find. What are we looking for? Clementine trailed behind him like a tiny shadow. Seeing if the previous owner left us anything useful. Like. Hanks opened compartment after compartment. Until finally, he dragged out a heavy metal toolbox from under the passenger seat. Inside was a complete set of basic tools, wrenches, screwdrivers, pliers, even a jack. Beneath them lay a tourist map of Macon County. Well, seems Lady Luck has lifted her skirt for us once again. He stuffed the map into his pocket, grabbed the toolbox, and headed to the rear storage compartment with his little shadow following along. There he found 2 dusty but intact 20-liter fuel cans. He set them outside next to the toolbox, then slid under the vehicle to check the undercarriage. Clementine squatted beside him, watching with wide, curious eyes. Hanks checked for rust and damage first, then pulled out the oil dipstick. Wipe, insert, pull again. Under the light, the oil was thick, pitch black, and nearly unreadable. Yeah, this all needs replacing, he muttered. What's that black stuff? Clementine asked softly. It's the machine's blood. Once it's dirty, the machine won't run. So we give it new blood. She nodded solemnly, even if she didn't fully understand. Next, Hanks inspected the tires, found the slow leak, checked the wear on the others, then popped open the hood. He removed the air filter. It was choked with dust and dead bugs. The spark plugs took more effort, and he needed a special socket. Clementine tried to help by handing him tools, often the wrong ones, but Hanks took each one anyway, patting her head. "Not this one, little Clem. But thank you." She puffed up her cheeks in determination and continued her helping. Glenn eventually wandered over and offered the bits and pieces he knew about this old RV model. After a thorough inspection, Hanks finally crawled out from underneath the vehicle, patting the dirt from his clothes. "It's a bit worse than I expected," he admitted, "but it's fixable. We'll need new engine oil, a filter, an air filter, spark plugs if possible, and that tire patched up. Biggest problem is the battery. We'll probably need another vehicle to jump-start it." He glanced at the 2 empty fuel cans. "And we need more containers. This RV drinks nearly 100 liters. 2 cans won't cut it." A plan formed in his mind. Hanks stared out at the silent, desolate street beyond the motel window. For Clementine's sake, every single obstacle had to be overcome. "Let's confirm our position and head out," he said to Glenn. Then he knelt down to Clementine's eye level. "Clem, stay in the RV and guard our home, okay? If anything happens, ask Lee for help." Clementine nodded fiercely, face serious with the weight of responsibility. "I'll protect it." Hanks smiled, ruffling her hair before calling Glenn inside. He spread the Macon County map across the table, circling their location in red. "Glenn, this is us, right?" Glenn leaned in and pointed firmly. "Yep, this motel." Hanks traced his finger across the map until it landed on a specific spot. "Fuel comes first." He tapped the gas station icon. "Quick stop gas station. Here, we'll need as much as we can carry. 2 cans won't be enough." "Yes, sir." Glenn nodded vigorously. "I know that place. Their backyard used to have a bunch of empty fuel drums, maybe for farm equipment." Hanks folded the map with a determined snap. "Good, then that's where we start. Auto parts, Rocky's Automotive Store. You know it." "Know it, of course." Glenn's eyes lit up. "That place is big, and the owner sells everything, from tractor parts to lawnmower oil filters. They'll definitely have what we need. It's on the way to the gas station too, so we can hit it first." Hanks nodded with satisfaction and shifted his finger on the map. "What about this community convenience store? Size, and the chances it's already been stripped bare?" Glenn scratched his head. "Not the biggest, not the smallest, but yeah, it definitely would have gotten messy when everything first broke loose. But small stores like that sometimes have blind spots, storage rooms, employee areas. Stuff people might have missed, and it's near the parts shop." Finally, Hanks tapped a spot on the map marked with a bold star, the Macon County Sheriff's Department. "This place has what we really need. What's the situation there?" Glenn's expression turned grim. "That place fell apart really early. When I escaped, I passed by it. Heard tons of gunfire and screaming from inside. By now it's probably crawling with those things. And who knows, other survivors may have had the same idea." As expected, Hanks said flatly, unfazed. "So the order is this: parts store, convenience store, gas station. If time and luck allow, we'll take a chance on the sheriff's office." He folded up the map and looked at Glenn. "We travel light, move fast. Grab what we need and get out. Priority items: motor oil, filters, spark plugs, food, and anything that can hold fuel." Hanks checked his weapons. His P226 had 1 magazine loaded, 1 full spare, and 1 completely empty. The Beretta 92 had burned through 2 mags in the last firefight, only the mag inside remained. "Take this for protection," Hanks said, handing Glenn the Beretta. "In times like this, people can be scarier than walkers." Glenn wavered, eyes flicking toward the pistol, tempted. But after a brief hesitation, he shook his head. I've got something else." He dashed out of the room and returned moments later, proudly carrying a baseball bat. He swung it experimentally in the air, like a kid showing off a brand new toy. Yeah, you and a baseball bat really go together," Hanks said, watching Glenn with a strange sense of déjà vu creeping up his spine. "Maybe wrap some barbed wire around it someday, might even match the baseball cap on your head." Glenn paused, seriously considering the idea, making a mental note to look for materials later. Hanks rubbed his temples, pushing away the weird premonition, then retrieved the Beretta's bullets and loaded them back into his own magazine. On the way out, He grabbed a crosshead screwdriver from the toolbox, just in case things got up close and personal. The two of them packed light, empty backpacks on their shoulders, and hurried toward the nearest destination, Rocky's Automotive Parts. To be continued. Thanks for watching.